I was going to put my drink on.
Live.
Okay. Welcome, everyone. Hi. Thank you so much for coming tonight. We are here at the Good Now Library, and tonight we have certainly 50 people. We have a lot of people streaming in, watching from all over, so we're thrilled, and we thank you for joining us online, and we thank you for joining us in person, especially in braving the cold. My name is Holly Bernini. I'm the Director of Development for the Good Now Library Foundation, and if you don't know what the Good Now Library Foundation is and what we do, we just happen to leave on your chair. We would love for you to read it. We do, we've really touched every spot in the library now. We raise the funds that enable this place to continue to be full of activities and always progressive and an excellent place for studying, learning, for social, community hub, all of those things. And so we are the ones, we raise the money. We've done renovations from bottom to top. We've done the lobby here. We have done the children's room. Upstairs, the new maker space. And right now we're renovating the historical room. But we are always in the midst of something. We do some programming. We support the museum passes, the program, which is very popular. And we also run the book nook. So we are always looking to expand our reach for people to know who we are and what we do, and we hope you'll spread the word. We would appreciate that very much. But everybody, of course, is here tonight to see Gina, to listen and hear Gina speak. So I am very happy to introduce Gina Lucente-Cole. Gina, I will be brief, but Gina is an author, a coach, and a consultant who specializes in helping organizations improve their performance through expertise in organizational development, team facilitation, her management and leadership development, performance consulting, everything. Gina published her first book. Everybody should see this. The Next Level. She published this in 2020. And this is a book that helps high-performing professionals up their game to move forward and achieve their goals. Gina has a master's in science from Lesley University in training and development. She has a bachelor's of science from Bentley University in management. And tonight, of course, we are all here, and she can talk about leading the future of work. I think we will find it's relevant to each one of us as we all figure out if we're going back, how we're going back to the workplace, how to engage our employees, how to try to be a leader when you're possibly remote half the time or full time, and actionable steps that you can take to help make it work for you. So I'd like to introduce Gina. Thank you so much.
So here's good. Oh, thanks. Thanks. I'm going to do a combination of walking around and some sitting to do a fireside chat kind of vibe, and then some standing right here. And my bent typically is going to be a little bit more towards corporate and organizations. So I'm seeing in the room that people are nodding, but Amy, you're tracking the Facebook comments, so if you let me know what people are interested in there. So I have prepared things I want to talk about, and I have a framework, but this is considered like a total free-for-all. Happy to answer questions that I have, not a free-for-all for a certain person who's saying, don't give her that leash. I won't give you that much leash to do that, but I'm open for any questions, and the more interactive I think we can make this, the better. So again, my bent is more towards corporate, but I want to hear your stories, and I know some people who have registered and familiar with you, and I know what some of the organizations you work at are named, and so we will keep those anonymous, but feel free to give your own stories, and when I ask for your comments or your questions. So first, and I'm going to ask the people in the room to raise their hands for this. So I have an A, B, and C multiple choice question of why you're here. And so the first question, and I'll be asking for the folks who are on Facebook Live to answer A, B, or C. So for A, I want you to answer A. I'll give you the three questions first, or three answers. So why you're here. And letter A, if you're personally curious, you just like to learn new things. B is professionally curious, if there's something you think you could apply back to your job. And then C is that you know me and I bribed you. So if you can answer, so in the room, hands up for A, personally curious. Okay, and B, professionally curious. Okay, you can vote more than once, obviously. And then C, if I bribed you. not as many bribes. So I want to check in. How are our Facebook Live folks?
C.
C's?
A B.
A B, okay.
An A.
All right, personally curious. Yeah, so even though there are people who are personally curious, there's things you can apply just to help you, I think. It's part of knowing what's going on, I think, in the world and what's happening. So first I'm going to tell you things that you already know, but I'm going to give you some stats about what's going on in work, and this is post-COVID, and this is the impact of COVID. So the clients that I deal with, and I'll be sharing stories with you about some of the things they're doing, what's working and what's not. And so I'll be sharing you some of the things that are going on industry-wide, and also telling you what I'm seeing, like real impact on people that I talk to. I am on Zooms with people in leadership workshops at least 10 hours a week. So I'm getting stuff constantly, data all the time, stories and impact. I've been doing that for over a year, and I've seen how the trends have morphed. So I'll be paying most attention to what's most current, because what happened 6 months ago is already aged out. So I'll be like, here's what's going on right now. Omicron has changed other things. One of the examples for that is that companies thought, oh, we're going to open up, we've disinfected everything, we're ready to rock, and then in the fall, they were looking at having people back in the office, and Omicron came, and now most of the organizations that I work with are just kicking that decision down the road. So they either have a small group of people that work in the office and come in because they want to, or they're as part of their role, and most people are not back in the office. And January was the time that they had a flag, we'll see you back in January, and we haven't seen that occur. The other thing, so we'll talk about what does that mean for hybrid working and what does that mean for people and teams and growing your company. But right now, the big disconnect is that 40 to 48% of workers, and I'm generally speaking of white collar, and it's actually higher for blue collar, service, medical, and frontline and education workers, but 40 to 48% of workers are, I'm open to leaving, I'm checking out what's out there. So either actively searching for a new job or open to seeing what's next, and that is 2 times the rate from 2019. So the impact on that right now is companies are freaking out about losing their best talent, which they are, and it actually started a year ago when some of the top talent were starting to get picked off by recruiters on LinkedIn. So it started over a year ago. So now this mass exodus, you'll hear it, the Great Resignation. We're calling it more like the Great Reshuffle, because the people in the white-collar groups, they're not leaving the workforce, they're leaving companies to go to another company. So I'm going to talk to you too about what are the reasons why they're doing that. And so I'm curious, and I'll be asking the Facebook folks what they think, if they want to answer, if they're seeing it. But in the room, raise your hand if you are seeing the impact of high turnover or resignations in your offices. All right, so I'd say about half, a third to a half in the room are seeing the impact there. Does anyone want to volunteer? You're anonymous. Anyone want to volunteer what they know or have heard the reasons are? Anyone want to say why people are leaving? Yes?
We have a mandatory return to office and people don't want to return to the office.
You have a mandatory return to the office, okay.
2 days a week, flexible work. But
Flexible work.
You have to be in the office 2 days.
So,
And people are leaving because they do not want to be in the office.
okay, so that's one example. Mandatory return to the office, 2 days a week, people are saying no. Are those 2 days at the choice of the employee or team, or how are they deciding?
The manager's supposed to coordinate, so there's as much collaboration as there can be.
Got it, great.
I've seen this in retail. People don't want to work for, they're not getting paid enough, they feel like, to come to work. So especially in retail, I know that my sister works for CVS, and so they have to close stores. They don't have enough people to come to work and do those jobs. They don't want to, or they're getting paid more by Amazon or somebody else just to load boxes onto a truck and not have to deal with the public.
Mm-hmm.
So they're losing people every day
Yeah.
to that.
Okay, front line. And I saw Heather's hand up, so I'll go to Heather and then back.
I just know, like, some of the companies we work with, people are leaving because they don't want to be vaccinated.
So some people want to go for higher pay and less risk or less long hours. Vaccination.
We're seeing a lot in like the digital e-com space
Yes.
folks leaving just because there's better offers out there.
Okay, we're going to talk about that. Better's offers, like, what does that mean? It's not just money. So it is one of the top things, but it's turning out to be not just the money. Yes?
Those with school-aged children and the complete unknown, whether kids are in school, out of school, learning
Yes.
from home.
The impact. So disproportionately, these moves are being made by women who traditionally in the U.S. take on more of the home and childcare responsibilities. So some of them are opting out for a fully guaranteed hybrid or fully remote job so that they can make sure that in case things change in the home situation, they've got it covered. So we'll talk about, too, about the impact of what that means for a leadership pipeline for women in organizations like 2, 3, even more years from now. What does that mean in terms of what is the demographic of the workforce, the people who are promoted and who stay and have tenure? So that is another impact. So, okay, thank you. Yes?
Just to say on Facebook here, we have a couple comments that burnout, specifically from a teacher and a nonprofit employee.
Yep. And I know we have some, at least one educator in the room. And so I've heard from educator retail taking the brunt of a lot of the changes and expected to, more than corporations, pivot and adjust much faster than other, corporate, going back to the office, has a little bit more space and time to make those adjustments. So some of the reason that people are leaving, in addition to what you all recommended or said was your experience, is that other people say, I got COVID clarity, and I know now more of what I like, what's important to me. I have a new awareness, and it can be driven by the work-life balance. It can be driven by what I like to do. It can be driven by a lower tolerance for dealing with what they consider the BS of my job. And they're like, you know what? I can go somewhere else. This isn't as valuable to me anymore, and I have a lot more options. And some people are actually not moving, and they're staying put. Anyone want to guess why people are saying, you know what? I'm sticking it out. Anyone want to guess what the top 2 reasons for that are?
They're going to retire. Retirement.
Yeah, they're kind of like too steady, it's stable, so I'm going to stick around because it's stable. And the other people who are like, I'm just nervous about the uncertainty. So this I'm pretty sure of. So there's a stability. I'm not interested in leaving, but also I feel safer, more stable staying. So that's some of the reason why those people are staying. So the ones who are staying and versus the ones who are leaving, a driver that's not true for either of them is loyalty. So people aren't saying, I'm here to help the company, because there's been a real shift, like I said, that COVID awareness. They're not like, I'm not feeling as loyal to the company. And the weaknesses or the loose connections that an organization maybe had with their people before COVID has been really exacerbated. So I'll tell you, a lot of the things that I'll tell you later, best practices, aren't just, what do you know? Hey, COVID made this magical thing. They're always there underneath. And it's like best practices they probably should have been doing. And so now it's catching up. By the conditions, the external environment of COVID has now made these weaknesses in the organization kind of come up and be clearer. So the bottom line for people leaving is there's a mismatch between what the people want, the employees want, and the organization, what they expect from the organization and what the organization is doing. All right. Before I keep going, who has a question? Yes?
Are there generational trends in this?
There are generational trends in this. There's 2 things. So I can talk to you about generational trends. Typically, and I'm going by something Holly mentioned to me at the beginning today, that typically so I'm Gen X, so Gen X and boomers aren't feeling as much of a draw to leave for the same reasons as some of the younger folks. So that would be millennials and Gen Z. Millennials and Gen Z are more interested in going into the office for the camaraderie, for the interaction, and for the idea that I need to be there face-to-face to network, to get to know other people, to connect with others, and be exposed to projects and work. And so organizations need to think about, what are we going to do to make sure that those people, so like me as a Gen X, I had the benefit of building my career in person with people. So we need to think about, what are we going to do to set up opportunities for people to network, have exposure to senior staff, get new projects and new development opportunities without being in the office. So the Gen X, like myself, and boomers are less interested to go in to the office. My perception is that they have other things at home that are pulling them, responsibilities of family, elder care, child care, elder care, other things at home. They're like, listen, I realized this was a lot easier for me when I didn't have to go in the office. I'm going to keep cruising like this. So there is going to be a development gap, but the leadership can figure out a way, okay, how can we make sure, and I can get into the real nuts and bolts in that soon, well, what can we do to make sure people feel connected and like, I'm going to grow here. I have already worked with companies that have hired, I've worked with managers who are on leadership workshops with me on Zoom, who have started an organization, never met their boss in person, hired their entire team remotely, have never met their entire team has never been in the same room together, and now the manager is like, I'm thinking about the next thing. And the number one reason they tell me, this isn't research from Harvard Business Review or anything, they're like, I just don't feel connected here. And that is such a shame because they're skilled, they know the company, and so there's something missing in that remote piece. So there's a higher level leadership action that can be taken to help those people be connected. Unfortunately, the focus when COVID first came was, let's get the work done. If you remember, it was really, let's go back to a year and a half, it was really operation-based. Like, let's get the work done, and then what should have come secondly was, how do we work together? And that has really stagnated. The work is getting done, but at the cost of the teams and the people in their development. So that's why we're seeing people leave the office so much. But from the drive of who wants people in the office, who do you think wants people in the office? Which? Who? Boomers, executive level. Yeah, executive level want people. Do you want to guess why? And this is, they do, yes. Yeah, they want them in the office. Why? Did you?
They're paying real estate for it.
They're what?
They're paying the real estate bills.
They're real estate bills, and we're based in Boston for this. That square footage is expensive to have empty halls and echoing things, and plus all the security they added in. So it's expensive. They also have a bias because that's how they grew their career, and they're like, I know this model, and I want to do it. And there's something else I read, and it was in, I want to give credit where credit is due. Let me see if it's in my notes. It was the Wall Street Journal. And another thing they said, and this I thought was interesting enough that I think it's really true. It's not super data, they're speculating. They were like, listen, if you're in the same size Zoom box as somebody else, you don't have the status that you used to have when you went into the office and you had the big office and you had the perks, right? You're just another Zoom box. And that's kind of knocked you down a few pegs. And they're like, listen, I want to go back in so I can be, the big wig. So I thought that was an interesting thing. So I'm seeing a lot of nods in the room. So you think that's part of it's true? Yeah.
Yeah, never thought of it. It's
Yeah.
also, when they go in, there's someone special, right? I mean,
Exactly.
Your father can be an executive when he gets home, he's just dad, and it's something that's different and makes you feel special, and you don't have those men need that.
Well,
Yeah, they don't get it at home.
say that again.
A lot of women need it too.
A lot of women need it too, like that. I feel special. I worked really hard. My Zoom box is the same size as everybody else's, right? Maybe I have a fancy bookshelf, And I've noticed, by the way, I could tell you the demographic slice of cats that walk across the Zoom screen. And, typically skews younger when the cat goes by. So just something to notice, yeah. And then typically skews older if someone says, sorry about that, that's a leaf blower outside. So it's just interesting about what the different things are. It tells me about the different people. So yeah, I think it is a status thing, right? My little Zoom box isn't the nice office I had in the executive suite. All right, so that's some of the things that we're seeing. And it's costing companies a lot in terms of productivity. Forget making up what Zoom can and can't do, but people are disengaged. Only 34% of workers in general right now are engaged, like punched in, like paying attention 100%, like they were. And so this is a problem because they are ripe to, so the ones who are disengaged are ripe to be poached or leave on their own. So what's the difference now? So who's engaged and the ones who are disengaged, what do they need to make the difference? So what do you think, I'm going to ask you before I tell you what some of the research says. What do you think some of the things are? When the people are punched in, what do they have that you think the ones who are disengaged don't? Yeah.
They need to feel that they're cared for, so
They-
whether it's development or something.
Cared for, development, yes.
Share,
Connection,
I mean, financial, monetary, shares in the company. some
shares in the
sort.
company, rewards, compensation, benefits,
Autonomy.
autonomy to make the, you got, ding, 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 you guys are all hitting them, exactly what it is. What else?
But they're making a difference.
Making a difference, right? So I'm reading a lot. All of these things are not the nuts and bolts of Zoom and offices. This is, what's my connection to my team, my colleagues, and my manager? Do I feel like my work has purpose? And companies are like, but we just gave you a bonus. Why are you leaving? And the companies, there's a mismatch between what the people who are working there want and what the organizations are trying to throw at the problem. So they're trying to do kind of these quick fixes, you know, these kind of cute bonuses and weird perks. Remember Zoom cocktail hours or, right? I did one thing with an organization and they shipped, this is earlier in the pandemic, they shipped everybody a little kit and it was I liked it, it was pretty cool at the time. It was a little garden kit and you could make a mini terrarium. And so that was like the team building event. So everybody got shipped a box with a terrarium in it. And it was the first attempt to like, let's spend some time together. Everybody build a little terrarium and then show it, you know, show and tell on the screen during Zoom. So it sounds pretty cool, but you know what? I haven't heard a thing in the last year about what are we going to do to get the team together. There is no purposeful connection or conversations. It's what's the meeting about? It's about this project. Okay, everybody get on. Very few, I would say less than 10% of my clients are saying, all right, let's have a team meeting. Let's talk about stuff. So what's missing are the conversations in the hallways, conversations in the kitchenette, and the conversations over the cube walls or that stuff. So that stuff is a big gap that is leading to this feeling of people feeling disconnected. So some of the things that are solving it, and I'd be interested in hearing about how is that hybrid. Is anyone else going hybrid right now and in it? Anything on Facebook? Want to check on? No. Anything from the hybrid? What are you seeing as the upside?
I tried going in, but when I'm there, I enjoy the company. So the commute feels like a waste of time now. But when I'm there, I enjoy interacting with my people. But at the same time, we can't have a lot of meetings still. Right? We can have 2 people in a room with masks on. I think a lot of people think it's a check the box activity versus why do I need to be here? I've been perfectly productive for the last 2 years. Why do I need to physically be in the office? And I think it goes back to what you said about the generations. It's a little bit of a, to make sure I'm not camera here, the emperor has no clothes, right? No one wants to tell our senior executives, we're perfectly productive without
Yeah.
being in the office.
So the response was that the people feel like sometimes it's just kind of for show. You're limited in the size of meetings anyway, and you feel like you could do the same work when you were remote. And so going into the office and the commute time is now burning time that you didn't burn.
And real clothes.
And plus no clothes, exactly, but plus that, and no cats. So the impact on that is, the ideal is, I want to connect with people, I want to check in, we coordinate, and then we feel good. What I have found is, that I'm hearing as a best practice is aren't set dates in the office, like Tuesdays, Thursdays, everybody comes in, but instead more like, if they allow it with larger gatherings, everybody come in, we have a certain activity, a team building, or a meeting, or a kickoff. So a very focused purpose reason to be there, and not just a regular work day. So an all-hands meeting, information sharing, that type of thing. You know, senior leader Q&A, here's a launch of our next project. Those things that have a purpose and are a special event seem to be the ones that people are more excited and interested in doing, rather than the 2 days in the office.
Gina, don't you think though they're missing that, what takes time to build, like when you go to a meeting,
and there are 5 of us sitting around and we're waiting for the meeting to start, and we have side conversations. I'm building a relationship
Totally.
with you and with you. Now we're on Zoom, and if it's just me and one other person, I'm talking, but then when other people come in, we get
We
quiet,
stop.
it's a silent
Yes.
conversation. And so when you do those one-off team building, you've missed the whole, like, foreplay of building that relationship.
Yes.
For lack of a better way to put it, before you get into that we're all gonna love each other. And
Yes.
I think that is what the younger, in my opinion, what the younger generations are missing.
Yes, and I've heard that. So what Michelle just commented on, that time at the beginning and the end of a meeting. Like, say you were in the same conference room and you have 5 minutes to kill before the next meeting starts. You're going to chit-chat, you get to know that person a little bit, and we are lacking that. There's an organization I work with, and I work with them on meeting management skills, how to run a meeting. And one of the things we're adding on to the next version is, what are you doing for meetings that aren't focused on the work? And, or what are you adding in for buffer time? Okay, we kick off the meeting, we go around the room, not a goofy exercise, but who's here, what can you offer, what do your colleagues need to know about you and the work you do? Because you're missing those introductions. A lot of these meetings just go right into the nuts and bolts of the work. So we talked about having that buffer at the beginning or the end of the meeting. End the meeting 10 minutes early and say, hey guys, we're just gonna have a round robin, chit chat, stay on for the final 10 minutes, or if you have to go ahead and drop. If you wanna hang back, go ahead. So purposely building in those connection times is huge. And then having, like I mentioned before, those team meetings with the purpose of, let's just talk about how do we wanna work together. So I work with people when I'm on those calls, I told you, 10 hours a week, they are back to back to back. And I don't know when they get their work done, and they tell me, well, after all my meetings are done at the end of the day. So we have to kind of leaders need to reformat that schedule.
Or they're multitasking during the meeting.
Yes, that's the second thing, is they're multitasking meeting because the meetings aren't run well, because they haven't gone to my workshop yet. And so their meetings aren't run well, and I was like, listen, you can run a better meeting more efficiently with less time, so that people will feel engaged because they know you're not burning their time. So they're basically, I'm babysitting this meeting, listening for my name to get called while I'm doing my other work. So structuring a meeting the right way with the right purpose can really help. Do you have the right people in there? I don't like when I call it holding them hostage. So I'll invite this person because I might need to ask her one question in an hour. Why would you do that to them? You call them in, you have a very tight agenda, they're there for 10 minutes, and then you release them back. But meetings are not run well, and that is adding to the fatigue and burning people's times. Yeah?
I just thought on that too, that what's also happening is the new old problem of having some people at home and some people hybrid. So some people in the room and some people still on Zoom, which was the old world, but haven't learned anything
Yes.
to go forward. And all of my clients have said the best decisions happen when we hang up the phone. When everyone in the room starts chatting.
And what we don't want is 2 separate meetings running, right? After we have some people in the room live and some people remote, and those are the toughest meetings. It's actually 3-dimensionals. You're having 3 meetings at one time. There's a meeting in the room, there's the meeting, sometimes there's another group together in a whole conference room together, and then there's a 3rd meeting, which is everybody else sprinkled perhaps around the country or even internationally.
Oh, I was just
You
going
had
to
a
say,
question, yeah.
some people are commenting that sometimes they can't hear the audience questions.
Okay, so
if you
I'll
don't mind
repeat.
rephrasing,
Yes.
but on occasion.
Yes, sure.
Can you just give us the microphone? Well, unfortunately, it's wired.
Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, so I've been trying to repeat that. I'll add more clarity to that, yes. So the idea behind those meetings is, that's a real heavy lift for the meeting runner. So it's like running, you are not even fictionally, or it's not the illusion, you are running 3 meetings at one time. And it's a lot of work to do that, yes.
I think I'm also seeing like the big difference of when to have a meeting or when it can just be an email.
Yeah, so there's the question of when to have a meeting, when to have an email. So I'll give you, if anyone's interested in a general rule I have is if it's information sharing only, information sharing. If you have an agenda item called updates, I want you to strike that and send an email instead. Or have a nicely formatted and timely dashboard where people can go get the information they need. If I see the words, I tell people in my workshops, if I see FYI or updates on an agenda, I want you to strike that and then send out the report or the pre-reading and then have the Q&A in the meeting. All right, what questions you have about this report, what's missing, what don't you understand, all that. So you can trim that down. The email that takes place of a meeting people really enjoy. Did you have a stuff? Yeah, follow up?
Just one thing that I just started to join this regular meeting at work, and one nice thing they do is they send a pre-read, but then the first 20 minutes of the meeting is time for you to read the pre-read. So everybody is quiet and it's just block time, because where I work, nobody reads a pre-read anyways. So it's kind of like, read the pre-read and now we're going to talk about it. So it's just kind of like settled for 'em.
So what that organization does is puts time into the meeting for the homework or the pre-reading of the report or the budget. I do that sometimes with the workshops I do that are instructional, and if not enough people have done the pre-work, I'll say, all right, let's take 5 minutes, do the pre-work, and then we'll reconvene. So it's a very similar idea. So maybe building in some of those tasks into the meeting, like the pre-reading or some of the other pre-work. Yeah, that'd be great. All right, good. Other questions or comments about that? I'm going to keep going. All right, so people have thought that a general idea of people leaving organizations were from compensation, some benefits, and flexibility. The most recent data has morphed. Again, it's that COVID reshuffling of priorities and values. So here are what is coming out as real reasons why people aren't leaving. So there's some general ideas, and then this is some of the next level down when people are being a little bit more truthful. 54% say they don't feel valued by the organization. 52% say they don't feel valued by their manager. 51% say they don't feel a sense of belonging at work. So that's that I don't feel connected here. After I've been here a year and a half, I don't feel like this is my place, so I'm going to leave. And so what are we going to do about this? Right? It's a heavy lift for all the leaders. You have a small team or you're an exec. And the big difference here is going to be changing the way you lead your people. Everybody has solved how we're going to do the work. The work is getting done. And now what are we going to do about the people part? And so it's not tools, it's not technology, and it's not processes. And keeping your people, they're expensive to, it's between 1/2 and 2 times their salary to replace them. So what I want you to do is pretend, as your people leader, that your best employee just handed you or told you they're quitting, right? And like you try not to freak out, right? And so you say, what's it going to take for you to stay? And you find out, what would it do? What can I do to make your dream job? Or you say something like, if I gave you a magic wand, what would you fix so that you can stay? And so these are actually called retention interviews, not exit interviews. So what you want to do now is find out what would keep you here now so that the organization can start making the changes. So for an organization to poach one of your engaged employees, typically it only takes a 20% salary bump. So they're coachable, and that's when they're engaged. The ones who aren't engaged, they'll just go. They're a lot easier to pull away from the organization. So the idea of retention interviews, what do you need to stay? What's important to you? Flexibility of the where and the why of working is huge. Another thing that's important for attracting talent, I work with a lot of people in HR in the organizations I work with, my contact people there. They are dying and having such trouble filling talent positions. They can't get candidates. There's a lot. It's a job seekers market. And what I recommend for anyone, is anyone in recruiting? So my recommendation is that you list on your job descriptions, we will take, please apply if you feel like you meet only 75% of the qualifications. Because men typically will apply for a job without making about 75% of qualifications. Women will typically apply for a job if they meet at least 90% or more of the qualifications. So I want to encourage organizations to be very explicit. If you think you can make 75% of this, please contact, please join, please apply. And also, what organizations can do, and this is a real taboo subject, and people don't like when I mention this, salary ranges. Post them. Yep, right now that's one of the things that's the mystery, and people get into a series of interviews. They need to know where they're going towards, what they're going for. Is that a question?
Why would they not just put the minimum requirements on the job listing?
They do put the minimum requirements, and then they say things like responsibilities and other skills, and some people are deterred unless they check off every box. When we know, a lot of times you take a job to get to the next level, you gain skills. So a lot of times you go into a job that you will grow into, and not that's a lateral move. So if you're looking to attract talent and grow your organization, having explicitly saying, please, we're inviting you to apply even if you don't hit every one of these requirements. So I would consider that. Also, for the work group, I like hybrid. I think that's the future. I think hybrid is the future, whether it's optional days in the office, crafted by each team to say this is the way we work, this is what's going to be good for us. It depends on the type of work you do, the cadence. It also depends on what other tools you have. So I work with organizations who have Slack, Teams, Google Chat. I can't even think of them. There's so many. So my recommendation is you're really clear on what channel is used for what communication. So updates go here, product questions go here. If you're in the middle of working, put it on this Slack channel. So right now people are inundated with so many messages working remotely. Having clearly defined modes and which channel that is on is really important. Sometimes people in the organizations I work with, I say, when do people text you? And people are like, oh, texting's a free-for-all. I'm like, when do you end your workday? Because now you don't have the physical barrier of leaving the office. When is no more texting time? And some organizations say, we don't have one, and other places say, I don't text people on weekends. So are you going to use your phone for work conversations, or are you going to keep it to Slack or Teams? So defining those communication channels is huge. Anyone managing different time zones? International? You are? Yep, you are. So being cognizant of who's awake, who's got the burden of the late or the early meeting. I had recently meetings in Europe, so I was up bright-eyed and bushy-tailed and caffeinated at 6 a.m. to have meetings in Europe. And so in Asia, they're up late. So sharing the burden across the time zones for that can be really helpful for your people. And then the purpose, who was talking about the purpose part? It was feeling connected. No, it was over here. The idea of like, what am I doing? What's the purpose? Here's how you're helping. And being clear about, we're not just doing this type of work. This is how we're helping our employees. Here how we're helping our partners. And that helps with the managers to be clear on, here's what the work does, here's why it's important, and those conversations with the people that report to them so they can feel inspired and motivated. That's the work I help them do, is managers communicate through coaching, clear conversations, setting expectations, giving feedback, all of that stuff. And then there's the money. I could keep going. Are there any questions? I'll keep telling. I'm going to keep going. And no questions? And then there's the money. One of my favorite authors, Daniel Pink, talks about money. And he says, pay people enough so that money, the issue of money is off the table. Right? I love that rule. And I think that when organizations throw money at people and say, please stay, here's more money, it underscores that this is a transaction. And people are like, all right, so you're just buying me. And so I'm going to go get paid or get bought by somebody else that I feel more connected to.
Why wasn't I worth this? Yesterday?
Why wasn't I worth this? If you thought I was exactly, the comment was, why wasn't I worth this? Yeah, so the idea people think of, or the thought they have is, if I was worth this before, why weren't you paying me that? And it's only because I've threatened to leave or, I'm looking that now you've upped the ante. So you want to consider about what you're doing to recognize that, what are you doing for motivating them. Some bonuses or benefits that are coming up are more childcare subsidies, elder care, time off for family events. Other thing I've heard about is boomerang rehire incentives. So if you pull back a valuable employee, are there bonuses, or are you going back to get those people that have been gone for 6 months or a year and say, hey, come on back to us? Yes?
With those boomeranging, Gina, are you seeing any trend toward those who've retired coming back?
No, I haven't seen a trend as, the only trend I've seen, I have not seen the retirement trend of people coming back. If I have seen a trend, it typically is they don't come on for a role, or if they come in for a role, it's for a short time. So I'm going to cover X department division for 6 months, or is for a project. So I'm going to launch this initiative, make sure it's steady, and then I'm going to back off. So yes, but no, I have seen that happen, but it's not a big, big trend I've seen too much of. Yeah, but thank you for that question. Other things?
We always say that if someone answers the phone to get that salary request or salary offer, they've already got one foot out the door, right? They're either not engaged, or if they pick up, we don't want them to pick up the phone in the first place.
So you don't want, so your comment is you don't want people to pick up like an external recruiter call?
Right, because if they do, that means there's something that they're lacking, right? Because by the time I say to someone, what's it gonna take for you to stay, they've already mentally gone to that other place.
Yeah.
You're gonna lose them, I think there are stats that you're gonna lose them within a certain amount of time anyway.
Yeah, so the comment was by the time you have that conversation about what can it take to you to stay, they're already at a big risk with one foot out the door because they've already started thinking, well, what would it take me to leave? Yeah. So I want you to think about your practices and your procedures. What are you doing now to get the work done, and how can you give people more autonomy and creativity and independence in the work that they do? So you trust them to get the work done at home. And I want you to think about lessening that. Be clear about what the expectations are, but what are you doing to show people you trust them to get the results?
I have a question on Facebook.
Yeah.
Do you see a difference between for-profits and nonprofits in their approach and in your recommended solutions?
So the question was, do you see a difference between the for-profits and nonprofits? The answer is, I don't see a best practices difference. I will acknowledge that the nonprofits don't have as much of the money to pay for the tools to support some of that stuff. They, however, have a flipped advantage typically that people who work at nonprofits are there for the mission and purpose. So they have a little bit of an advantage there. So I would say it's a wash, generally speaking, with the organizations I work with. But again, just like nonprofits and for-profits, the things that were weaknesses have just been exposed and exacerbated in COVID. So I think we're almost at time. I'm looking at Holly.
You can keep going.
I'm gonna keep-
I'm learning about it. No, we can take questions and discussion, whatever you.
Well, I want to end. I have something I want to end with because it kind of relates to what's been exacerbated. So let me get my note. So I took this, and I didn't know whether I was going to start with it or end with it, so I'm going to end with it. So this is an article. It's from an HR trade magazine or industry, and the title of the article is "What Keeps HR Up at Night?" And I'm like, oh, good title. Let's click on this and see what they're saying, right? So HR's in reaction mode, and I know I have a couple of clients who are joining me on Facebook Live, and I want to give credit to one of my colleagues who's an HR professional, and she said, well, I love it the way she talks about attrition. When things aren't working, she says, people vote with their feet, right? And so that's how you know it's almost too late, right? Now you know there's a problem. So the idea of finding out what happens, what can we do beforehand? And so this is what somebody, an exec at KPMG says, and I think I'm pointing this out with some disdain and a sense of irony, because he says, I'm going to read you his quote. As a result of COVID, we're really listening to our people. And the foundation of any good continuous learning strategy is ensuring that we're following up with what we are hearing. So he added that KPMG has launched a plethora of new benefits and rewards to keep workers happy, healthy, and engaged. When you're giving your employees what's really important to them, what they're asking for, their satisfaction goes way up. So based on what I talked about today, you know, you can read my note. It says, too late. Too late. You should have been doing this all along. So now organizations are feeling the squeeze because now they're like, oh, I'm sorry, what did you want? And they're playing catch up. So this is KPMG and what keeps HR up at night. So I thought that was funny. All right, questions. Questions from Facebook, questions from the room, questions about anything. I'll talk about anything.
I'm just curious about the productivity piece, because I know in the beginning, people were home and were saying, oh my gosh, productivity is shooting up, and are you seeing kind of a trend of like, it's going down? Because we were saying, oh, people, you know, executives want people back because of productivity.
No.
Is that true?
No, what's the productivity is up or the same. Unfortunately, here's what's draining the productivity. Poorly run meetings and wasted time. Wasted time and poorly run meetings is one of the biggest drains that I see. Productivity was up in some parts because people worked during the time they would have been commuting. And that leads to some of the burnout that people had. So you had that 1 hour buffer. Hey, I used to do my podcasts. Hey, I used to talk on the phone with my friends during my commute, and now I don't have that. The transition is from my office or the bedroom or the back hall into the kitchen. And so that's been a drain. So those false gains for productivity came often at the expense of commute time. I've seen poorly run meetings be a bigger underminer of some of the other benefits.
And I would add to that some of my clients have said they're looking at digital agencies, and it's because they aren't commuting, their productivity went up. So now the bar is here, and clients
Yes.
are want the bar.
Right, so like how many hours a week am I working? The hours per week have not reduced. In fact, they've increased because people don't have that defining line between here's my office, here's not. The smart organizations are saying 5 o'clock, shut it down. I had a client who, she was the chief of the IT organization at a Boston area well-known organization. And at the bottom it said, replies not, so VP level, replies not expected after 5 p.m. or on weekends. And I said to her, I was like, wow, I am so glad you put that on there because maybe that's your preferred time to work, but it's coming from you, the head of the team, the whole group. You know, people might think that they need to respond faster. So I liked that kind of setting the expectations of don't respond to me, this is when I work type of thing. So you can do that just with conversations with your team. So those types of adaptations make people feel like it's okay. Yeah, empathy, people looking for empathy, flexibility, and a manager they feel like has their back and cares about their development. That's lacking right now. Right now the manager are like, what are the work, what are the metrics? And so people are leaving to go to a place that they think cares about them as a person and their development. That's what the trends are that I'm seeing right now. Yes?
What are you seeing from companies that have sales teams that normally are on the road and with travel restricted and shutdowns and?
Sales teams had a harder time, especially if their skill set was face-to-face, or they're in an industry where they had to go to like a manufacturing site and meet with the team there. Some of them have not been able to adapt, and some have been just fine. And I have not seen a trend. Some are okay and some are not. It's industry specific. It's generationally specific. I hate to sound too much like a consultant, but it depends. So it depends.
Well, a lot of companies, I know ours, like we saved so much money during the pandemic because people weren't traveling and they weren't schmoozing clients and they weren't doing all that. So we want to continue to reap those increased savings. Why don't we go back to normal?
Yeah.
And salespeople aren't ready to adjust to that.
Yeah, so the comment was we're saving money with reduced travel budgets, reduced meals, And then some salespeople are hesitant. Some of the salespeople I know were the first ones back out there in person. They're like, this is the way I do business. I need to be on site. I need to talk to the people that use and touch our product or our service. Technical people, on-site technical solutions people, that never stopped because they had to be the ones that I fix this system, I go there no matter what. I have another client who does things where they're embedded on site. They have the client they're on site, they have a desk at the client site and they work there with the people. So one of my organizations has people on site no matter what because of the nature of the work. So that never changed for them. Yeah. Anything else? Yes.
I was curious, personally and professionally, how you got to doing this. I mean, this is amazing. What was your trajectory to figure out that the coaching?
The coaching part, well, I worked in learning and development. I have a background in that, and I have a couple of friends in the room from grad school that did that with me. So I was in corporate, and I did learning and development. I did professional services. And then it was a natural complement. They kind of go hand in hand in the HR and the development world, coaching and development and classes, like I do learning development and coaching for individuals. So they kind of mesh. So yeah, I work for myself now, and I used to work inside organizations. Now I do the same work just for individual companies. And so they hire me to come in and do different work for them. Sometimes it's this last week I was away. I was in Austin, Texas, running a strategy meeting for an executive leadership team, so I can do that type of work. I do that type of work too. Most of the work I do though is Zoom. I am Zoomerama. Yes.
We have a question on Facebook from a college student. What advice would you give to new college graduates entering the workforce during COVID?
Well, okay, that's a hard, to be more specific, I would say, number one, besides the job skill they want to check into, is to assess, like they can use Glassdoor or ask people they're interviewing with about the culture there. So the last thing you want to do is hire a new grad, give them a connection, give them a laptop, and they're in a room, maybe at their parents' house, and they are adrift. And they don't feel a connection to the organizations. They are a high risk of attrition. So I would say find out how and what the company is going to do to make sure you feel part of the organization. Yeah. That can be that's lonely. So they need to know what's there to support them.
Especially given what they've experienced the last 2 years.
Yes, they've been in upheaval for the last 2 years of school. And what's that connection? Do they want to land somewhere and make it feel a little bit more steady for them? I love buddy system, new hire buddy. Here's my buddy. They show me the ropes. I connect with them. Connecting with their manager consistently, daily, for check-ins. That onboarding is very high touch if you want it to be successful, especially for a new grad who's not as savvy about organizations. Yeah. Anything else? No? All right, that's it. Brains are full. Thanks. Thank you. Wow, good. Great. Are we still live? I've got books. I've got books for everybody.
Thank you. I'm just going to thank everybody for coming on Facebook Live. Thank you. Fabulous. I mean, just unbelievable. I think relevant to all of us. I also just wanted to introduce Kristen Schneider and Amy Sheldon, who did all the work putting this together and did a great job.
Thank you.
So, thank you, and drive safe.
No way, I have a book.
Oh my gosh, that's...
We got a book. Who wants a book?
Yes. Yes.
We'll post information about the on
Yeah.
Stack of books.
Yeah.
You should have what? Oh, this is good. The books are only for the people who came.
They're for the people who came.
Yeah.
We'll post the information for people to buy.
Well, that's fine too.
Yes.
I'm signing them.
Get in line, everyone.
Get in line.
Thank you.
Thank you. I like it. Good.
Best speaker.
Oh, good.